24 executives are about to watch me deliver my cheating wife's belongings to her 24-year-old boyfriend, and I'm going to enjoy every second of it. The boardroom goes dead silent. 24 pairs of eyes dart between me standing in the doorway with 2 designer suitcases and Marcus Cole, the graphic design intern who's been sleeping with my wife for the past 7 months. I hadn't planned on crashing the quarterly strategy meeting, but timing has a sense of humor. Delivery for Marcus Cole, I announce. My voice is steady. I believe these belong with you now. I watch the color drain from his face, that perfectly groomed face that smiled at me at the Christmas party while texting my wife under the table. I'm sorry, who are you? The CEO asks. His pen suspended midair. I smile. Not the desperate grin of a humiliated husband, but the cold expression of a man who's done his homework. I'm Alexander Harrison, Diana's husband, soon-to-be ex-husband. I wheel the luggage forward. Since Marcus has been enjoying my wife, figured he should get her stuff too. Someone mutters, Jesus Christ. I keep my eyes on Marcus. This isn't about shame. It's about consequences. I hadn't always been this person. 3 weeks ago, I would have handled this privately. Maybe tried counseling. That guy died when I found their messages. Diana left her laptop open. Notification on the screen. Can't wait to have you inside me again tomorrow. I read everything. Months of messages. Her complaints about me, our marriage, our life, the hotels they used, the lies she told. She called me boring. That hurt more than the sex. 15 years together, 5 married, 3 years of fertility treatments while she was working late. Now I know where she was working. Mr. Harrison, there's been a misunderstanding, the HR director says. No misunderstanding? I pat my briefcase. I have evidence. Hotel receipts, company credit card statements, GPS data. Thought I'd deliver Diana's things to Marcus personally. I unzip the first suitcase. Her silk blouse on top. I toss it to Marcus. He catches it automatically. She likes it when you unbutton this slowly, I say. Builds anticipation. Someone laughs. Might be the CFO. I pull out her skincare routine. $300 of Swiss face cream. She needs this every night or she gets cranky. I slide it across the table. You probably know that from all those breakfast meetings while my father was dying in the hospital. Marcus looks sick. Alexander, he whispers. First names now. I smile. Funny thing, Diana told me she was mentoring you. Said you had potential. I was proud of her for helping young talent. The irony tastes bitter. Second suitcase has her jewelry, medications, toiletries. The anxiety pills are new. Started those when your affair began. I step back and adjust my suit jacket. Also, emailed your compliance department. Company money funded their hotel visits. Multiple policy violations. Marcus has gone white. You can't. This is a workplace. So is my marriage. Was supposed to be a partnership. Diana invested elsewhere. My phone buzzes. Diana. Speak of the devil. I put it on speaker. Hello, Diana? Alex, where the hell is Marcus? We were supposed to meet an hour ago. The boardroom is so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Every executive leans forward slightly, not even pretending not to listen. Hello, Diana. I'm afraid Marcus can't come to the phone right now. He's in a meeting with your entire executive team. And me. We're having the most fascinating discussion about corporate ethics. The silence on the other end is deafening. Then, what have you done? Her voice is low, dangerous. I've simply delivered your belongings to your boyfriend in front of your colleagues. Oh, and I shared that interesting presentation you've been working on. You know, the one documenting all the ways company money has been funding your midlife crisis. You had no right. Actually, as a corporate attorney specializing in ethics violations, I had every right. As your husband, I had every right. As a human being with dignity, I had every right. This is going to cost you in the divorce, she threatens. I laugh then, genuinely amused. Diana, honey, I'm the one with the prenup protecting my assets. I'm the one with evidence of your infidelity and misuse of company funds. I'm the one who still has a job. So please, tell me again what this is going to cost me. Richard clears his throat. Diana, this is Richard. I suggest you come to my office immediately. Another long silence. Then the call ends. I pocket my phone and survey the room. 24 faces stare back at me with expressions ranging from shock to grudging admiration. Marcus sits slumped in his chair, defeated, as Janet waits to escort him to HR. Well, I say brightly, I believe my delivery is complete. Thank you all for your attention. I apologize for the interruption to your meeting. As I turn to leave, Richard speaks up. Mr. Harrison. I pause, looking back over my shoulder. This company owes you an apology. What happened here was unacceptable, and we will address it with the seriousness it deserves. I nod once, acknowledging his words without accepting them. I suggest you review your ethics training program. It seems to have some significant gaps. With that, I walk out, leaving Diana's suitcases behind. I don't need her baggage anymore. Literally or figuratively. In the elevator going down, my phone buzzes again. Not Diana this time, but my divorce attorney. It's done, I text her, exactly as we discussed. Perfect, she replies. This should make the negotiations considerably smoother. I sit in my car for a few minutes, staring at nothing. The whole thing feels surreal, like I'd just watched someone else's life explode. I start the car and drive back to my office. There's still work to do. When I met Diana 12 years ago, she was finishing business school. I was the TA who helped with case studies. Smart, ambitious, knew what she wanted. I proposed on the Bainbridge ferry. She said yes. We bought the condo together, got married, made plans. She wanted to wait for kids until her career stabilized. I agreed. The IVF failed 3 times. Each round cost $15,000. Each time, Diana said we'd keep trying. I started wondering if the problem was me. Now I know she was making other plans. Marcus joined her company 7 months ago. Marketing intern, fresh out of design school. I met him at the summer picnic. Seemed like a good kid. I told Diana to mentor him. That part was accurate. The signs were obvious afterward. Late nights, weekend emergencies, new gym routine. New perfume I didn't buy. Phone guarded like state secrets. But there were other things too. She started buying new lingerie. Expensive stuff I never saw her wear around me. When I asked about it, she'd say it was for her own confidence. She began working out with a personal trainer, someone named Brad, who she mentioned constantly. Always Brad this, Brad that, until I started wondering if there was something there too. Then there were the business trips. Diana had never traveled much for work before, but suddenly she was flying to Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles for client meetings and strategy sessions. Each trip coincided with Marcus being out of the office too, I learned later. The credit card bills showed expensive dinners for 2, hotel upgrades, spa treatments. When I asked about them, she'd get defensive. I work hard, Alex. I deserve to treat myself once in a while. I was busy. My practice, the fertility treatments, Dad's cancer, didn't have energy to be suspicious. What a fool I'd been. 2 weeks ago, Dad died. Pancreatic cancer, 6 months from diagnosis to end. Diana was supportive, showed up for dinners, asked how he was doing before changing subjects. The diagnosis had come out of nowhere. Dad was 68, healthy, active. One day he was playing tennis at the club. The next he was in the ER with abdominal pain that wouldn't quit. The doctors ran every test imaginable before delivering the verdict. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Inoperable. 6 months, if he was lucky. I took leave from my practice to care for him. Diana supported the decision, even encouraged it. Family comes first, she said, kissing my forehead. We'll manage the finances. Don't worry about work. I spent every spare moment with him. Driving him to chemo appointments, helping him manage his medications, trying to make the house safer as he got weaker. Diana would visit on weekends, bringing flowers, asking how he was feeling before steering the conversation to lighter topics. But she never stayed long. Always had work to catch up on, emails to answer, deadlines to meet. I wish I could do more, she'd say, kissing my forehead before heading back to her laptop. But someone has to keep our finances stable while you're dealing with family stuff. It seemed reasonable, practical. Very Diana. I realized now she was fucking Marcus while I held my father's hand during his final weeks. The night after his funeral, she had an emergency client meeting, left me alone with my grief. That's when I found the messages. I scrolled through months of their exchanges, her complaints about our marriage, fantasies about their future. She told him I was emotionally unavailable, obsessed with having kids, that our marriage was dead. While I was injecting hormones nightly for our future, while I was holding Dad's hand as cancer ate him, while I was managing our finances, our home, our life. "You're the only man who understands me," she wrote. "When can we be together?" he asked, waiting for the right moment to destroy someone's life. I confronted her that night. She came home smelling like him. "It's not what you think," she said. "Really, because I think you've been screwing your intern while I watched my father die." She switched tactics. "You haven't been present for years. What did you expect?" That's when I knew we were done. Not because she cheated, because she blamed me for it. "Get out," I said. "This is my house too, house I pay for. House in my name because your credit was shot." She slept in the guest room for 3 days. We barely spoke. "We need to talk rationally," she finally said. "Marriages survive affairs." I looked at her across the kitchen island. This stranger who could betray me and expect forgiveness. "You're right. I've contacted a divorce attorney. You'll hear from them. I need you out tomorrow." Her face went white. "Where am I supposed to go? Marcus's place? Or whoever else you've been seeing?" Her expression told me I'd guessed right. "Be reasonable, Alex. I'll even help you pack." That night I made a plan. 15 years as a corporate attorney taught me one thing: emotions lose cases. Evidence wins them. First, I secured finances, emptied joint accounts, my fair share only, changed passwords, removed her from credit cards. Next, evidence. I called Jake Morrison, a PI who handles corporate fraud. "Don't need proof she's cheating," I told him. "Need proof she used company resources." Jake smiled. Going for the professional kill. She made it professional when she chose her subordinate. 2 days later, Jake delivered. Hotel charges on company cards, fake client dinners, car GPS logs, matching their meetings. Even a Portland conference, where Marcus got added last minute with no business justification. Enough to violate every ethics policy Diana helped write. While she was at work, I searched her home office. Found a velvet box, platinum watch I'd never seen. Receipt, $4,200, bought 2 weeks ago. Not for me. Same drawer had a USB drive. Confidential client files. Information she had no business taking home. I copied everything. Insurance, if things got ugly. But there was more. Hidden in her closet, behind her winter coats, I found a second phone. An old iPhone she'd claimed was broken months ago. When I powered it on, it was full of photos and videos I'd never seen. Diana and Marcus at restaurants I couldn't afford, at the beach house of some client, in hotel rooms that looked nothing like the budget chains she claimed to stay at for work. The metadata on the photos told the real story. Dates, times, locations. A complete timeline of their affair that stretched back nearly 8 months. Not 7 like I'd initially thought. They'd started almost immediately after he joined the company. There were screenshots of their Venmo transactions too. Diana sending Marcus money for lunch and coffee, hundreds of dollars at a time. Money that came from our joint account, our savings, our future. I photographed everything. Every receipt, every message, every piece of evidence. By the time I was done, I had enough documentation to bury them both professionally and personally. 3 days gave me enough to destroy her career and marriage. But I wanted public humiliation. The kind that follows you forever. Thursday quarterly meetings had maximum attendance. Diana would be at her client meeting, the Marriott, with Marcus. But Marcus had been summoned to present design concepts. I made that happen, called the CEO's assistant, posed as Diana's assistant, said Marcus had crucial visuals to share. Thought Diana was presenting, the assistant said. Conflict came up. She specifically requested Marcus attend instead. It worked. Marcus got summoned, leaving Diana alone at the hotel. The morning of my plan, I woke up calm. Dressed carefully, best suit, perfect grooming. I packed her suitcases methodically. Every prized possession. Jewelry, designer clothes, expensive skincare. Everything neatly folded. As I packed, I made sure to include specific items that would maximize the humiliation. The lingerie she'd bought for Marcus, tags still on some pieces. The perfume he'd given her for her birthday. The one she claimed came from her sister. The silk scarves she wore to their hotel meetings, still carrying traces of his cologne. I included the watch she'd bought him, along with the receipt showing it came from our joint account. The love letter she'd written but never sent, found tucked in her jewelry box. Even the birth control pills she'd been taking secretly while telling me she wanted to get pregnant. Each item was carefully chosen to tell the story of her betrayal. This wasn't random cruelty. It was strategic humiliation, designed to expose every lie she'd told, every deception she'd crafted. I practiced what I'd say, not crying, not screaming. Cold fury burns hotter than any outburst. I drove to her office at 2:45. Meeting would be in full swing. Security knew me from company events. Surprise for Diana, I told the guard. Things she needs for her business trip. He waved me through. Executive floor was quiet. Through the glass walls, I could see them. CEO at the head, VPs and directors around the table. Marcus presenting to the screen, his moment to shine. I took a breath and pushed open the door. The next few days moved fast. Diana was terminated same day, Marcus transferred, then quietly fired during restructuring. 3 months later, the story spread through Seattle's business community. A husband delivering his cheating wife's belongings to her young lover in front of executives. People talked about it for years. My phone rang constantly. Reporters, friends, colleagues. I said nothing to press. I'm handling it, became my standard reply. Diana tried calling dozens of times. I didn't answer. My lawyer advised against contact. She tried showing up at the house once. I watched through security camera as she stood on the porch, pressing the doorbell. After 10 minutes, she left. Divorce proceedings were swift. Diana's lawyer tried arguing emotional distress. My lawyer responded with evidence. Months of infidelity, misuse of company funds, breach of trust. Your client conducted an affair using corporate resources while her husband cared for his dying father, my attorney stated. Diana sat across from me, her face controlled fury. She'd aged in the weeks since the boardroom incident. You destroyed my career, she said during a break. You destroyed our marriage, I replied. I just made sure there were consequences. She settled for far less than initially demanded. House, cars, most investments stayed with me. She got personal belongings, half our savings, smaller monthly payment. You'll regret this, she said, signing final papers. Someday you'll realize what you lost. I looked at her one last time. I already know what I lost. Question is whether you'll understand what you threw away. She didn't answer. I sold the waterfront condo 6 months later. Too many ghosts. The buyer was a young couple, probably the age Diana and I had been when we'd first imagined our future there. I hoped they'd be happier. The house I bought was in Queen Anne, 1920s craftsman with original hardwood and a neglected garden. It needed work, which was exactly what I needed. Something to build. I spent weekends stripping paint, refinishing floors, learning to garden from YouTube. There was something therapeutic about working with my hands, creating something beautiful from something broken. My practice thrived unexpectedly. Word of my handling of Diana's betrayal spread through business community, but not how I'd feared. Instead of vindictive ex-husband, I was seen as someone who understood real costs of corporate ethics violations. Companies started seeking me out for harassment policies, ethics training. The lawyer who walks the walk, one CEO called me. I embraced the specialty. There was purpose in helping organizations create cultures where people like Diana couldn't operate with impunity. The adoption process began 1 year later. I'd always wanted children, and that desire hadn't died with my marriage. If anything, it had grown stronger. The social worker was a kind woman named Sarah. She asked hard questions about my divorce, my motivations, my ability to provide stability. You've been through significant trauma, she said. How do I know you're not trying to fill a void? I thought carefully before answering. I've wanted to be a father since I was 25. That existed long before my marriage ended. A child deserves better than to be someone's consolation prize. She approved my application 2 weeks later. Jake Morrison became an unexpected friend. Our monthly lunches continued long after his services ended. He was good company, direct, honest, with dry humor that matched mine. You know what I admire, he said during one meal. You didn't try to destroy her personally, just made sure professional choices had professional consequences. Diana did that herself, I replied. I just made sure people knew. 2 years after that boardroom day, I was working in my garden when my phone buzzed with a text from unknown number. Saw Diana last night at Canlis with some young guy who looked barely 25. Some things never change. I recognized the number. a former colleague who'd witnessed the suitcase delivery. For a moment, I felt something, not jealousy or regret, but pity for the new guy who didn't know what he was getting into. I typed back, "Hope he delivers her bag somewhere even more public," then deleted the exchange. Diana's ongoing saga wasn't my story anymore. The adoption agency called the following week. They had a placement, a 3-year-old boy named Jamie, whose birth parents had relinquished rights. He'd been in foster care 8 months. "He's had trauma," Sarah explained. "He'll need patience, consistency, and a lot of love." "Don't we all?" I said. The first meeting was at the agency's office, a cheerful space filled with toys and children's books. Jamie sat in the corner with a social worker clutching a worn stuffed elephant that had clearly been his companion through multiple placements. He was smaller than I'd expected, with Diana's dark hair but none of her calculating eyes. His were wide and wary, the eyes of a child who'd learned too early that adults couldn't always be trusted. "Hi, Jamie," I said, sitting at his level. "I'm Alex. I've been hoping to meet you." He studied me for a long time before speaking. When he did, his voice was barely a whisper. "Are you going to take me back if I'm bad?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Here was a 3-year-old who'd already learned that love came with conditions, that safety could be revoked at any moment. "No, buddy," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. "When you come home with me, it's forever, that's a promise." He moved in 3 weeks later, after a series of supervised visits and home inspections. The social workers wanted to be sure I was ready for the challenges ahead. I wasn't, not really. Nobody could be ready for the nightmares that first month. The way he'd flinch when I moved too quickly, the panic attacks when I had to leave him with babysitters. But we figured it out together, day by day, building trust, one small moment at a time. The first time he called me Dad was on a Saturday morning in December. We were making pancakes, and he asked for extra chocolate chips. "Please, Dad," he said, naturally, as if he'd been saying it his whole life. I had to turn away for a moment, overwhelmed by the simple perfection of that word. 5 years after the suitcase delivery, I was at a legal conference downtown when I saw her. Diana was across the hotel lobby, older now, hair shorter and lighter. She was with a man I didn't recognize. Mid-30s, expensively dressed. She saw me at the same moment. For a few seconds, we just looked at each other. Then she started walking toward me. "Alex," she said when she reached me. Her voice was softer, less certain. "Diana." We stood there awkwardly. Two people who had once shared a life, now strangers with complicated history. "You look good," she said. "Happy. I heard about the adoption. Congratulations." "Thank you," she glanced around, perhaps checking if anyone was watching. "I owe you an apology. For everything. For the affair, for how I handled it, for blaming you." I studied her face, looking for signs of the woman I'd once loved. She was still beautiful, but there was something brittle now, something that suggested the years hadn't been kind. "I appreciate that," I said. "Do you forgive me?" It was a question I'd thought about many times. In therapy, during long runs, in quiet moments when Jamie was asleep. "I've let go of the anger," I said finally. "That's not the same as forgiveness, but it's enough." She nodded, understanding the distinction. "I made a lot of mistakes. I convinced myself I deserved better than what we had, but I never appreciated what we actually had. We both deserved better than what we became," I said. "But we can't change what happened. No, we can't." She paused. "I hope you know that I did love you. Maybe not well. Maybe not enough, but I did love you." "I know," I said, and I did. "I should go," she said, "but I'm glad I got to see you. Glad to know you're doing well." She turned to leave, then looked back. "For what it's worth, you deserved better than I gave you. I hope you've found it." "I have," I said, and I meant it. That evening I drove home to Queen Anne, where Jamie was waiting with homework and stories about his day. We made dinner together, grilled cheese and tomato soup, his current favorite, and talked about his upcoming soccer game. After he went to bed, I sat in my garden with a glass of wine and thought about the conversation with Diana. I felt lighter, as if a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had finally been lifted. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Beer tomorrow? Sarah wants to hear about your latest case." Jake had married Sarah 2 years ago. Unlikely romance that started when she'd called him for a background check, but they were perfect for each other. Can't tomorrow, I texted back. Jamie has soccer practice. Saturday? Works. And bring the kid. Sarah wants to see how much he's grown. I smiled and put the phone away. This was my life now. Soccer practices and homework help. Dinner with friends and quiet evenings in my garden. It was smaller than the life I'd planned with Diana, but it was entirely my own. I finished my wine and went inside to check on Jamie. He was sleeping peacefully, stuffed elephant tucked under his arm. Tomorrow we'd have breakfast together, and he'd tell me about his dreams, and I'd help him with math homework. It was a good life, better than I'd dared hope during those dark weeks after discovering Diana's betrayal. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's building something beautiful from the wreckage and refusing to let someone else's choices define your future. I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, grateful for the journey that had brought me here, grateful for the man I'd become in the process of losing everything I thought I wanted. The suitcases had been delivered exactly where they belonged, and so had I.